The underground chamber was alive with whispers, the flickering torchlight casting long shadows that danced across the damp stone walls. Lira stood at the center, her pulse a steady drumbeat against the rising tension. Around her, the faces of the rebellion's core members, roughened by hardship, hardened by years of oppression, watched with a mixture of skepticism and awe. Her hands, trembling slightly, began to glow with an ethereal light, the translucent shimmer of magic crackling faintly like distant thunder. Kalen stepped forward, his voice low but steady. "Show us again, Lira. Let them see what you can do. If we are to trust you, we need more than words." The young woman inhaled deeply, centering herself. She reached out toward a cracked shard of glass embedded in the floor and willed it to levitate. Slowly, it rose, spinning gently in the air, catching the flickering torchlight and refracting it into a kaleidoscope of colors. The rebels murmured, some exchanging glances of disbelief, others nodding in approval. "It's unlike anything I've seen," whispered one woman, her eyes bright with hope. "If she can control the sphere's magic, maybe we really can break free." But not all were convinced. Doubt lingered like a cold draft, and Lira could feel it pressing against her, as heavy as the glass sphere itself. Trust was fragile here, and the stakes were higher than ever. Meanwhile, far above in the alabaster towers of the ruling elite, Lady Maris stood before a translucent map etched with swirling lines that pulsed like veins. The glass sphere itself was projected, its fissures glowing ominously. Her fingers traced the largest crack, a smile curling her lips, ceaseless and cruel. "The girl grows bold," she said to the counselors gathered around her, their faces masks of concern and calculation. "But this city is ours to command. Send the guards. Find her before the rebellion spirals beyond control." Her voice was cold, a blade sharpened by years of entitlement and fear. The elite would not relinquish their power without a fight. Back in the city's shadowed alleys, Joran moved like a whisper, a shadow among shadows. He slipped through the narrow passages with practiced ease, finally coming to a halt before a hidden door. Inside, Lira awaited, heart pounding. He pressed a folded note into her palm, his eyes flickering with an emotion she couldn't quite read. Fear, regret, desperation. "You're not safe," he warned, voice low. "There's a traitor among us, someone close. Trust no one without question." Lyra's breath caught. The rebellion, already fragile, was cracking from within. She folded the note and tucked it away, a chill creeping over her resolve. The meeting that followed was tense. Accusations hung in the air, alliances tested like the thin glass that encased their city. Then, without warning, a thunderous explosion shattered the uneasy calm. Glass shards rained down from the cracked dome above, sparkling like deadly stars in the dim light. The distant cries of panic echoed through the streets, a stark reminder of the danger closing in. Lyra's gaze hardened. The trap had been sprung. Time was slipping like sand through her fingers. "We can't afford doubt," she said firmly, stepping to the front. "We must stand together or fall divided." Kalen nodded, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Lead us, Lira." As the rebels rallied, the city trembled beneath the weight of fractures of glass, of trust, of fate itself. And somewhere in the shadows, the ruling elite watched, ready to strike again. Lira knew this was only the beginning. The true test lay ahead. Navigating fractured loyalties and unyielding power to ignite a revolution that could either shatter the sphere or bind them all in chains. Her fingers itched with the urge to push the glass further, to crack the boundaries not just of the city but of the world itself. But with every crack came risk, and the line between savior and tyrant blurred like a reflection in broken glass. She inhaled the cool, stale air of the underground, the scent of damp stone and smoke, steeling herself for the storm to come. The rebellion's fragile flame flickered, but it would not be extinguished here. Not yet. And as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the glass dome, Lira stepped forward, ready to face the fractures within and without, knowing that every choice could be the last. Her story was no longer just one of survival, it was a reckoning. The city waited, breath held, for the next crack to appear. The air beneath the floating city was thick with a damp chill that seeped into Lyra's bones as she stepped cautiously through the narrow passage. The entrance to the catacombs was hidden beneath an abandoned workshop in the lower city, a place whispered about in rebellion circles, but rarely ventured into by anyone. Beside her, Iron moved with practiced stealth, his eyes scanning the shadows, alert for any sign of danger. The faint glow from veins of enchanted glass embedded in the cavern walls cast eerie blue light, flickering like the heartbeat of the city itself. "Are you sure this is the way?" Lira whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant rumble of the endless storm that churned far below. Iron nodded, his expression grim. "The old maps are clear. The catacombs hold the secrets the rulers want buried. If we're to understand this sphere, this is where we find answers." Their footsteps echoed softly as they pressed deeper, the walls closing in, smooth glass shards glinting faintly among the ancient stones. Lyra's fingers brushed a shard embedded in the wall, its surface cold and strangely alive with a faint pulse. A flicker of power stirred within her, resonating with the glass in ways she was only beginning to understand. Suddenly, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above, covered with countless shards of glass that caught the blue light and scattered it like stars frozen in time. At the chamber's center stood a figure, or rather, a form that shimmered and fractured like the very glass surrounding them. The glassmaker's echo, Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The ethereal figure's voice was a haunting melody, echoing through the chamber like chimes stirred by a cold wind. "You seek the truth of the sphere, child of glassbound blood. Know that it was forged not from hope alone, but from sacrifice and pain beyond reckoning." The spirit's form shifted, showing visions of the city's creation, the artisans who poured their magic into molten glass, binding their souls to the sphere's surface to protect the city above the storm. Faces twisted in agony, voices silenced yet whispering in the very fibers of the glass. Lira saw the cost of the city's magical inheritance, the chains of power that shackled her ancestors. Her heart ached with the weight of revelation. Is this why the sphere cracks? Because it is alive with the suffering of those trapped within. The glassmaker's echo nodded slowly. The power you wield is inherited from those sacrifices. To break the sphere is to risk freeing the pain, or to control it at a price yet unknown. Lira stepped forward, touching a shard that seemed to hum beneath her palm. Memories surged through her, voices pleading, mourning, hoping. She felt both the strength and the burden of her lineage entwined in the glass. "I don't know if I can bear this," she whispered, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I must, for the city, for everyone trapped in this fragile prison." Iron placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll face it together, but we need to be careful. The more you use your power, the more the rulers will hunt you, and the sphere may not hold much longer." The chamber seemed to close in as the weight of their mission settled heavily in the air. Lira took a deep breath, steeling herself against the coming storm, both outside and within. As they retraced their steps back toward the city, the echoes of the glassmaker's warning lingered in Lira's mind. The sphere was not merely a barrier. It was a living testament to sacrifice and control. Every crack they had seen was a fracture in the delicate balance between freedom and domination. The city above waited, unaware of the truths unveiled beneath its gleaming surface. And Lira, now burdened with knowledge and power, wondered if she was ready to face the consequences of the choices ahead. The path forward was as fragile as the glass itself. One wrong move could shatter everything. Yet, within her, a spark of resolve burned fiercely. The city's future would be forged by her hands, one way or another. As the first rays of the dim sun filtered through the upper glass dome, Lira emerged from the catacombs, eyes fixed on the horizon beyond the storm. The journey was far from over, and the true battle for the city's soul had only just begun. Her fingers tingled with the magic of the ancient glass, a promise and a warning entwined. The sphere was alive, and it was waiting for her next move. The first light of dawn crept cautiously across the glass dome of the floating city, casting pale, fractured rainbows that danced softly over the rooftops. Lira stood alone on the highest accessible rooftop near the glowing fissure she had discovered days before, now pulsing faintly with an eerie inner light. Her breath came steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. Around her, the city below stirred to life, oblivious for the moment to the seismic change about to unfold. Her hands glowed faintly with a pale blue light, the signature of her burgeoning power inherited from the mysterious creators of the sphere. She closed her eyes briefly, focusing every fragment of her will on the fragile glass beneath her fingertips. The crack, already visible but dormant, began to pulse and shimmer, responding to her command. This was no accident, no slip of chance. Lira was about to shatter the illusion, the prison that had held her people captive for generations. It's time, she whispered to herself, a mixture of resolve and fear tightening her chest. With a deliberate surge of energy, Lira pushed her power outward, and the crack widened, branching like a spiderweb across the sphere's surface. The sound was subtle at first, the barely audible tinkling that quickly escalated into a sharp, echoing crack that rolled through the city like thunder. Below, the citizens stopped in their tracks. The glass that had always been a silent, impenetrable barrier now betrayed its weakness. Shimmering fragments of glass floated in the air, suspended by magic but unmistakably cracked. Children pointed skyward in wonder, while the elders whispered old legends of breaking and doom. Myra, standing in the crowded market square, squeezed Lyra's hand tightly, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You did it," she breathed. "You really did it." But fear lingered beneath the hope. The ruling council would not let this pass quietly. In the shadowed halls of power, Councillor Valen paced before the grand windows that looked out upon the fractured sphere. The light from the crack cast long fractured patterns across his immaculate robes. "The girl," he muttered, "has broken the seal." Other council members gathered, their faces grim as they contemplated the shattering of centuries-old control. Valen's eyes hardened. "We must contain this before it spreads," he ordered. "If the sphere falls, so does our reign." Meanwhile, in the hidden courtyards of the lower city, Joran rallied the rebellion. Torchlight flickered over determined faces as news of the crack raced through the streets. "The glass is no longer unbreakable," Joran declared, raising a fist. "Today, we have proof. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for freedom." Lyra's actions had ignited a spark that threatened to engulf the entire city. The lines between hope and chaos blurred as alliances shifted, and the future of the floating city hung in the balance. As the sun climbed higher, the cracks spread slowly but surely, a visible reminder that the old order was fracturing. Lira felt the weight of her choice settle heavily upon her shoulders, to control the power or to free her people from their glass prison. The decision would come soon, and the consequences would echo across the endless storm below. She looked once more at the fracture, her heart pounding with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same again. The first crack was only the beginning, and with that, the city of Glassbound held its breath. The air around the shattered balcony shimmered with the charged energy of the storm below. Lira stood motionless, her fingers lightly tracing the glowing fissure that snaked through the glass beneath her feet. The endless tempest roared beneath the sphere, a deep, relentless growl that seemed to echo the turmoil swelling within her. Lightning slashed through the sky, illuminating the shattered glass shards that caught the light like thousands of fractured stars suspended in the air. Her breath came in shallow bursts, the cool wind whipping her dark hair into a wild halo around her face. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide from the dangerous power she was beginning to control. But something deeper held her fast, a mix of fear, curiosity, and the stubborn ember of hope. Behind her, footsteps approached, soft and deliberate. Kellen's familiar silhouette appeared, his green eyes sharp and steady even in the chaos. "Lira," he whispered, voice barely audible over the storm. "We don't have much time. The cracks are spreading faster than we anticipated." She turned to him, her gaze steady despite the storm's fury. "I can feel it, Kalen. The sphere's magic, it's alive, and it's changing. I think it's responding to me, but it's overwhelming." He nodded grimly, pulling out a worn map from beneath his cloak. The map was marked with jagged lines and symbols, indicators of the glass's weakening structure. "The rebellion needs to know where it's safe to move. We have to protect the people while you try to control this power." Together, they moved to the rebel hideout, a cramped space beneath the city where whispers of revolution had long been nurtured. The air was thick with tension and the faint metallic scent of glass dust. Around the flickering candlelight, others gathered, their faces etched with worry and resolve. As Lira spread out the map, she felt eyes on her, some filled with hope, others with doubt. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing against her chest. "We can use these cracks," Kalen said, pointing to a cluster near the city's power conduits. "If you can manipulate the glass, maybe we can break their control over the magic." A murmur of agreement rose, but Lyra's heart twisted with uncertainty. The more she extended her powers, the more unpredictable the glass became. Small tremors shook the floor beneath them, and distant sounds of groaning glass echoed through the tunnels. Meanwhile, high above in the grand chamber of the ruling council, Lady Visara sat with rigid posture, her cold blue eyes narrowed as she studied the reports arriving from the city's surveillance. The fragile sphere, once a symbol of their absolute control, now betrayed signs of weakening. Her gaze flicked to the chamber's entrance as Lira was brought forth under guard. The whispers stopped. The room held its breath. Visera's voice was measured but icy. "You have become a threat to the order we have maintained for generations." Lira met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not your enemy. I want to free this city from the glass, from the lies, from the chains that bind us all." The council's murmurs grew louder, tension snapping like a drawn bowstring. Visera's hand rested on a concealed dagger at her belt, a silent reminder of the stakes involved. Escaping the council's grasp that night, Lira found refuge on a windswept rooftop where shadows danced beneath the storm's glow. There, Thane awaited, his presence as enigmatic as the swirling clouds. "The storm is not just a force of nature," he warned, voice low and urgent. "It's tied to the spheres, magic and to you. If you're not careful, it will consume everything, including your soul." Lira's eyes narrowed. "Then what am I supposed to do?" "Let the city fall." Vane's gaze was unreadable. "Control is an illusion. Power is a storm within us all. But mastery requires sacrifice. Are you willing to pay the price?" As the storm raged around them, the glass fissures pulsed with eerie light, reflecting the turmoil within Lira's heart. The choices before her were no longer just about freedom or control. They were about survival, identity, and the fate of everyone trapped within the fragile prison of Glassbound. And as the night deepened, so did the cracks both in the city's glass and in the fragile alliances that held it together. Lira took a steadying breath, the storm's howl a tempest in her veins. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and irrevocable. But one thing was clear, there was no turning back. The storm's eye was upon her, and she had to face it alone. The chamber beneath the city was cloaked in shadows, lit only by the faint, eerie glow of runes inscribed on the walls, their light pulsing softly like the heartbeat of some ancient entity. Lira stood at the center, her breath shallow, eyes drawn to the vast tome Eldrick had laid open before her. The air smelled of dust, old parchment, and the faint metallic temps of magic. Eldrick's voice was low but unwavering as he spoke. "The power you wield is no mere gift, Lira. It is a legacy bound by chains forged in the city's infancy. These are not just restrictions, they are curses, designed to protect the sphere and its creator's design." Lira's fingers trembled as they hovered over the tome's glowing script. "Curses, but I thought it was meant to empower me." "Empower, yes," Eldrick nodded, "but only under their terms. The sphere's magic does not bend to will without cost. Each use tightens the bindings around your soul, threatening to consume you if left unchecked." Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and resolve. The revelation was a double-edged sword. Knowledge was power, but it also exposed the peril she faced. "Then how do I break free?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That is the question," Eldrick admitted, "and the answer lies hidden in the oldest layers of the spheres, magical layers few have ever glimpsed." Outside the chamber, distant echoes of clashing voices and hurried footsteps reminded her of the unrest bubbling through the city. Mara's voice rang clear, rallying the rebellion from the depths of the underground tunnels. Lira could almost feel the fiery determination radiating from the rebels, their hope a stark contrast to the heavy weight of the curses she now bore. Later, in the grand hall where the ruling council convened, Lira faced Councillor Vale. His eyes were like shards of ice, cold and unyielding, as he regarded her with a mixture of disdain and calculation. "You tread dangerous ground, girl," Vale warned, his tone smooth yet venomous. "The sphere's magic is not yours to command. Recklessness will only bring ruin upon us all." Lira met his gaze, her own fierce with defiance. "It is you and your kind who have trapped us all in this prison. I will not be bound by your fear or your chains." Vale's lips curled into a thin smile. "Be careful, Lira. Power unchecked can become a curse worse than any bound by magic." That night, beneath the fractured glass dome, Lira stood alone, the endless storm swirling beneath the city like a living beast. The glass above her was scarred with cracks each, a testament to the tensions tearing through the city and her own soul. The weight of her inheritance pressed upon her, a heavy chain wrapped around her very being. Could she break these bonds without shattering herself? Could she wield this trapped power and lead her people to freedom without becoming the very thing they feared? The storm roared beneath her, a wild, untamable force, mirroring the turmoil inside her. As the glass trembled underfoot, Lira's resolve hardened. The path ahead was perilous, fraught with curses, political intrigue, and the ever-present threat of losing herself to the sphere's magic. But she would not turn away. Not now. The city's fate and her own hung in the balance, bound by chains that only she could break. And the first step would demand everything she had.